Imperative that cities consume less water, retain and reuse stormwater on site, treat and recycle human waste locally, minimize the energy footprint of water and waste services, and provide resilience to climate change and variability. So what does this mean to a mayor or city councilor? This is my city, Seattle. As a city elected official, my top concern is the health and safety of my citizens, so don't ask me to take chances on untested new systems for water supply or human waste disposal. Second, I'm working to ensure that my people are better off at the end of my term than at the beginning, so new water and wastewater schemes mustn't get in the way of economic development. Third, I care about managing costs. A solution isn't sustainable if it's not affordable to my citizens. And finally, as a politician, I work hard to achieve the best long-term results for my city while responding to whatever the current public issues may be. And right now, there's a lot of enthusiasm about being green, so I can capture a lot of political momentum this way. As a councilor, I may not be in charge of the water services, but I'm on the front line when things go wrong. I can't run away. I'm responsible for my citizens. I take it personally. Will my granddaughter, this is Olivia Joy, and her grandchildren have reliable access to safe and abundant water? Personally, I stop and think a little bit about how our urban water dilemma evolved. I grew up in China, where this was the urban waste system of the 1940s. The honey carts collecting sewage and transporting it out of the city to be used in the fields. The result was very high levels of child mortality and epidemics of waterborne diseases. We were the only Western family in our province that didn't lose at least one child to dysentery. Survival depended on boiling our water, getting all our immunizations, and being regularly dewormed. But the waterborne disposal systems which the West has relied on for 2,000 years, from the times of the ancient Greeks and Romans, these are the people that Paul wants us to unseat, right? Are hopelessly wasteful of both water and nutrients. That's my father-in-law, by the way. This model results in cities that are served by massive centralized water and sanitation infrastructures that are resource intensive. Both these models are fatally limited for the megacities of today, and climate change makes them even more inadequate for the city of the future. So how do we escape this dilemma? Are there alternative strategies for cities that protect public health, use resources prudently, are affordable, and will be climate resilient? Yes. As I see it, there's a wealth of innovation, and we've heard some of the techniques that have been talked about by our experts already. Membrane bioreactors, dilated streams, wastewater recycling, green roofs, low-impact development, eco-san, and so on. It seems to me the challenge isn't primarily technical, but institutional. How can we move from innovation to implementation? In the city of the North, the city that's built on the waterborne sewage model, there are multiple barriers to change, and these are the ones that I know best. Regulatory lock-in. Typically, the regulatory system requires each building to be connected to central sewers for sewage and storm drainage. And if you want to install some sort of alternate on-site system, it may not be acceptable to either the building authorities or the health authorities. Financial lock-in. It may not be possible to get funding for anything other than conventional systems. Institutional silos, we'll talk about some of them later, but I think about firefighters. Our firefighters are macho men and sometimes macho women, and they drive huge trucks. So if you want narrow streets with pervious pavement and stormwater swales, the firefighters will come out to the public hearing in force to protest against it, because they've got to have room for their big trucks. Organizational inertia. Innovative solutions usually involve recycling and reuse of water, wastewater, and stormwater, but the agencies responsible for water, wastewater, and stormwater may be separate agencies. with their own personnel and their separate priorities and their separate regulators. Jurisdictional fragmentation. The city of Miami, Florida, for example, is at extreme risk from sea level rise and storm intensification. But its adaptation planning requires political action by 35 separate cities and multiple special purpose districts, each with its own political realities. And finally, there's the barrier of the economic and political pressure to continue to permit development on shorelines and floodplains where climate vulnerability is greatest. So if you're discouraged yet, not discouraged yet, let's look at cities of the global south, where the challenge is to leapfrog over the limiting 20th century formats of the north. The overwhelming imperative for many cities in developing countries, as Paul has outlined, is exponential urban growth. But in addition, you may have to deal with inconsistent or unenforced regulations, lack of trained staff, inadequate tariff systems, lack of financial accountability, unreliable energy to drive your pumps and treatment systems. And just like politicians in the global north, local politicians in developing countries can seldom resist the economic pressure to allow development even where climate vulnerability is greatest. So how do politicians get past these barriers? What's the role of the city political leaders in addressing the emerging water imperatives? Let me give you a handful of examples of what city governments have achieved, often from very different jurisdictions and capacities, to illustrate how local officials are stepping up to the challenges ahead of us. A first step is building public awareness and political will. Here are 3 cities that have hosted international events for water in the past year. Zaragoza and Incheon are ICLEI members. Zaragoza's Expo was a celebration of water, and it resulted in mayors signing a Zaragoza Charter. Incheon's World City Water Forum produced a strongly worded Incheon Declaration, which I recommend to all of you. It's a wonderful document. Istanbul hosted the 5th World Water Forum with a local authorities program that culminated in many cities signing the Istanbul Water Consensus, which Andres spoke about earlier today. If you add in Stockholm and Singapore with their annual World Water Weeks, you begin to capture the power of city action for public awareness of water imperatives. Most of these are city initiatives. A city can create a brand to focus or enforce its water initiatives. The media representatives here will especially understand this. We've already seen a couple of times the Singapore brand for its water initiative. In my city, Seattle, we built our integrated water strategies around the goal of saving salmon. We worked strategically to create a defining regional icon of the salmon. We persuaded our citizens to restore creeks, to cut their water consumption 30%, to install low-flow toilets and shower heads in their homes, to retrofit their businesses to reuse processed water, to grow native plants in their gardens without fertilizers, and to allow their lawns to brown off in the summer. And all of this was to protect water resources for the salmon. How are city leaders stepping up? City leaders can span the silos of agency specialization. You all understand the problem. The water engineers may agree that we need green roofs and pervious pavements as a supplement to pipe drainage for stormwater. But unless the building regulators and the traffic engineers agree, it's not likely to happen. In a